Hello everybody and welcome to Happy Times and Places, which is a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Hadoke, get a friend to choose a story for me to watch and accentuate the positive during and try to guess what their favourite things about the story are.
Hello, Toby. It's Paul Litchfield here. 1/3 of the podcast noise that is a wheezing, groaning sound. Categorically, of course, the only Doctor Who podcast available. Now, it's just me, I'm afraid. My fellow companions can't be with me at the moment. Tom Neenan is relacquering his recorder in the Zero Room, and John Rain is walking his new dog, which is a cross between a pug and Adric, which means every time he throws a stick, it always comes back with something else. Also, I'm audio only at the moment, as I've currently lent out my face at the very last minute to the Scarlioni family somewhere in Paris. Anyway, my choices for you are the two-parter, David Tennant two-parter, that is Human Nature and Family of Blood, which I really enjoyed. So I'm going to tell you the bits I really genuinely adored about both episodes, and then I'll give you my super duper overall joy, love about the whole thing.
Well, welcome everybody. It's a dark, rainy night where I am. I'm being warmed by an actual fire and rather soberingly watching a piece of disposable entertainment that nonetheless means a great deal to me and any number of people, as the world seems to go a little bit crazy outside. I can offer no solutions to that, nor would I even try. But on a very small scale, when I need to escape from the world, I find Doctor Who a good place to hide, or at least to be distracted, or at least to make me think. I don't know. There's nothing to say, is there? Apart from Paul Litchfield and I watched Human Nature yesterday. We're now going to watch The Family of Blood. I only vaguely chose one sort of slight crossover with him, but it may be that I have a couple of things in the bank so that when he chooses them this time, I get a point for them. But then, of course, that means I won't get a point for the things I choose this episode. So he's still very much holding all the cards. So the Doctor was left with a dilemma. Let's see how that is resolved. I am on iPlayer. It's offering me to continue watching Doctor Who Series 3, Number 9, Family of Blood. So I'm going to press Select in 3, 2, 1. So this is what happened last time. I almost thought I'd got the wrong episode then, because there's quite a lot at the very beginning. It's a great piece of music from Murray Gold, isn't it? That Doctor theme, was it all strange creatures? No, that's a different one. I used to listen to, when I was touring Moths Ate My Doctor Who scarf, I had that album, and I alternated tracks from that with tracks from my youth or time travel related tracks as the sort of pre-show music. And this, I think this was one of the tracks. We Need a Time Lord. I think that was on the trailer that was on the end of the 42 before the Eurovision break. So we actually don't get back into the action. So the whole of the pre-credits is the edited highlights of last time. It's weird. I had to galvanise myself to watch this. It's peculiar. I'm a bit like this with The Empty Child the Doctor Dances, which is another absolute favourite of mine. But for some reason, when I consider watching it, I go, oh no, I want something else. And I don't know if it's because I worry that they're so good that they'll be disappointing, or it's because I know they're good, but they're not as easy a watch, say. I think I worry that they're not as easy a watch as a more sort of gallopy, cheerful, light story. But actually, they're not especially heavy going. They've still got plenty of laughs and plenty of action. So it's not like they're sort of dour and self-indulgent or like. I think I maybe think of it's like watching an art movie when I could be watching, a more populist fare, and yet actually this isn't that equivalent, and nor is The Empty Child. But for whatever reason, I don't rush to watch them as much as I do stories that I would probably score less out of 10 in a poll. And isn't that interesting? Because surely the whole thing about a quality story is whether you want to watch it often, or is it? No, because actually they should work not because of rewatchability, because most people don't rewatch things loads of times. I don't know. I've never quite resolved that. It's like, I probably choose to watch Tremors more than I choose to watch Lawrence of Arabia, but I would probably say Lawrence of Arabia is a better film. But then is it? If I would always turn to Tremors, is it just the self-loathing part of me that goes, it's okay to like Tremors more than Lawrence of Arabia, but I still like this more than, say, I don't know, Aliens of London, but Aliens of London, I see as sort of more fun and frothy and easy to sort of pass the time. It's almost like I feel that I need to give this a little bit more deference. I can't chill out how much, but I think this is great. Oh, they're so horrible. Oh, that's so good, and so they're so mean and cruel, and the actors are great. So yes, stop navel gazing, Toby. It doesn't matter how and when you choose to watch it. The night filming really helps with this as well. I love a laser beam. I'm not going to apologise for loving it. And I really love the fact that she's still got her balloon. But that's really chilling. That little girl is dead. I've met the actress. She's turned up at a couple of conventions and stuff, and she's very lovely and very polite. But it's a great image. I say a lot how, Doctor Who really works for me when there's a perversion of the everyday. And we've got a public school boy, a sort of kitchen maid, a farmer, and a little girl with a balloon. And they're absolutely terrifying because they're parodies of what we know, surrounded by a load of scarecrows. What a beautiful building. And I think this setting is quite evocative to me. I was bundled off to boarding school, not because we had money, the opposite actually. A charity paid for me to go and my dad buggered off, and I was very much a fish out of water. I know I have excellent diction, but I'm not posh. And it's a place of smells and memories and constant fear and tension of getting into trouble, or either with teachers or with pupils upon whom power is bestowed and then dispensed unfairly because it's dispensed by young people. And I think that's why it's a clever setting for this, because especially on the eve of war, because it brings all of that to the fore. The whole sort of private school dynamic, especially that it's one from the past as well. So it's heightened. That sort of class element is heightened. Pip Torrens is fantastic. He looks great. He's got a great face. He's an excellent actor. Really upcasting for this part. Although it's a good part, it's a beautifully written part. All the characters are very, very well. And I love all the sort of period dialogue. That it just seems it just has more weight than somebody going, effing hell, somebody's been killed or whatever. I think that sort of slight formality, that stiff upper lip stuff, is conflicting, because you kind of admire it, but also it's absurd. I hanker for it in a way. I hanker for decorum and manners and dignity in the face of disaster. But I also know that it brings with it, behind all that proper stuff is cruelty, is unfairness, is hypocrisy. And I think that makes it for such a compelling and conflicting setting. There's always a woman involved. I love the way that Harry Lloyd delivers these sort of straightforward, these very posh lines. Yes, I'm doing. It's wonderful. It's wonderful, and the twisty face that he does. He's really chilling and really strange, and it's great, this back and forth between them. And of course this is all because of the Doctor. All these people die because of the Doctor. And there's a big dilemma in that. Is the Doctor worth all of these lives? And we have to sort of go, well, yes, I suppose he is. Then you go, well, that's a very pragmatic decision. That's a lot of blood that you are prepared to give away for the sake of one person. And yes, the Doctor is, of course, very special. And it's odd because I sort of think, but the Doctor should be ideal, should be a hero, because that's what the Doctor to me was when I was younger. But of course, Pertwee is vain, Troughton can be terribly Machiavellian. Baker is Tom Baker is very yes, he's a fun, wayward eccentric, but he's also very brusque about death and cold and alien and detached. So the fact that I saw him as a kid, and all that stuff about using my mates as sandbags and everything, again, is brilliant because his role in this story is to be the stick in the mud headmaster, and that's Baines taking revenge on him in a way, even though it's not Baines, but you know what I mean, that in lesser hands he would be a stuffy figure of authority there to be shamed and to be ridiculed. But Torrance has dignity, and he's given those lines about actually all of those stuffy authority figures that it's very easy to mock, saw things. When we look back in the past and go, I can't believe they behaved like that or they did that. Yeah, they also did things that would give you PTSD, and that cosseted old 21st century me wouldn't last 5 minutes doing. So again, you mock the past at your peril. Well, you don't, because it's not real peril, because you're safe to do so. But I think it's intellectually dishonest. I think this whole sequence is extraordinary. I sort of gave a little spoiler last time. This is so well directed. The fact that it's at night time, it's got a slightly sort of mocking faux military aspect to the score, and yet it's not glib. It's not puncturing the reality of marching scarecrow monsters. It's utterly serious, and it allows the strangeness to speak for itself. I think this is quite remarkable, actually. And I remember Alison Graham writing in the Radio Times, not my favourite writer because she tended to generally just write a synopsis of whatever she was watching and give away spoilers. Now that's not Harry Lloyd in that shot there. You can see it's very brave of them to do that shot. I know he wasn't. He came a bit later, so the wide shots, it's somebody else. But I suppose they hope that your eyes are elsewhere. But in those wide shots with the scarecrows coming up, it's a double. That's really interesting. I mean, it's partially because I think a lot of these do they use filters on the camera? There's a slight mugginess to the shots, but I've got a projector now. I don't have a telly. I'm watching it on my big screen. You can see for sure it's not him. And it's I know people get annoyed that Martha has the unrequited thing with the Doctor going on, but I think that's a logical progression from Rose and the Doctor. Will they? Won't they? Do they? Don't they? Which dealt with the love aspect, the hanky panky and the TARDIS aspect in a way that didn't annoy me as an old fashioned fan because it never quite materialized. So you can this is brilliant where she's being undermined by the people at the time. And she's really likable in it as well, reacting to what would actually really piss you off. I think she skirts it very nicely, but there had to be a different dynamic, and it seems a natural one to have. Oh, she likes the Doctor, and the Doctor doesn't notice or doesn't have time for it. And I think you're digging really hard if you go. And then of course they do a thing. We go, well, let's cast an actress of colour in order to redress the balance of Doctor Who and indeed British television's history of not having quite as diverse cast lists as we might hope for. And then of course they cast an actress of colour and then go, oh well, because the Doctor doesn't love her, that means you're all being racist. And it's like, well, no, we're just telling a story, and we did some casting that we thought that there's a positive thing. You can. And this I feel happens more and more now, where the worst is assumed, and it's terribly easy to. Well, I'm not going to go any further with that, but it does make it hard to enjoy anything when I think when it's really easy to impose the worst possible intentions upon people, and I try not to do that. And I think in this case, with Martha, they wanted to create a different dynamic from the one that the Doctor and Rose had, which I think they do very well. They wanted to cast a good actress, which they do, and she's gone on to have a really good career, and I think she's been brilliant in some of the later things. In Sense8, she's absolutely fantastic in that. And added to which, some diversity in the casting. You then can't write a list of things you can and can't do with that character lest somebody decide that that's a racist decision. Well, you can, but I think it's intellectually disingenuous. This is, of course, because they go to battle together in the First World War, and this is clever because it sets up as a cruel payoff. We think they're actually going to die in World War One. Actually, what happens is they don't. But that's extraordinary, isn't it? The idea that school friends went to war together. Brothers, families did, didn't they? I find the First World War so terribly moving. I mean, all of the... there's no such... senseless death is a cliche, isn't it? Because all death, in a sense, is senseless, isn't it? But the First World War and the way that it was conducted seemed so cruel in its snuffing out of young life in a awful manner, and for Doctor Who to be taking that on, I think is but also to do it would be one thing to do a sort of story set in the war, and I think the War Games is very effective, albeit in a 1960s Saturday tea time way of showing that it's a grim and a horrible time. But I think this taking all of that stuff about the First World War and placing it within a context of weirdo alien mayflies and huge numbers there. I guess there must have been, that's a composite shot of lolloping scarecrows of doom, I think is incredibly brave and pitch perfect. This is dreadfully moving. This is the program that did the Twin Dilemma. This is the program that did the Androids of Taro. Fun romp. This is the program that did the Crotons. And I'm not saying any of those stories are good or bad, by the way. Androids of Tara is a 10 out of 10 for me. But it's a different prospect to this, having the kids crying. This is terrifying, but also they're crying. We see fear in Doctor Who often, but not the... and I remember crying at school because I was scared of a teacher or whatever. And then having this music... And again... We've all seen battle scenes juxtaposed with, ironic music or contrasting music to heighten the horror or to satirize the futility. But this is terribly moving and sort of horrendous and sort of sick, but the program isn't sick. Doctor Who isn't being sick. The program is, I think, being... responsible and brave and mad and intelligent, and we killed no one. That's so important. I find that extraordinarily moving, but again, bear in mind it's being moving whilst having schoolboys engaged in a gunfight with scarecrows. And Jessica Hines is brilliant again. Genuine kind of. Oh yes, and you're looking at him and you're thinking, because sort of the Doctor will know, the Doctor will have the right answer, but the Doctor doesn't have the right answer because he's not the Doctor. David Tennant is so good, and we love Pip Torrens. He's great, and that's just horrible. And he's sort of, he's shown that he's slightly more than the, stuffy figure of, and again you sort of go, they're asking a girl to do this. I mean, I think that's as impressive a sequence of ideas and realization as the show has ever done. I think it's extraordinary. I'm so proud of this mad program that sometimes I've been scarlet with embarrassment about. Sometimes I've wondered if I've really wasted my life diving headlong into the minutiae of what is actually a children's tea time television program, and I'm a 48-year-old man. Sequences like that, I think, make me go, no, it's more than that. It's a really special program. And actually to be special whilst being something that is mass watched family entertainment that has to be accessible to a mass audience, not to a group of intellectuals patting themselves on the back, not to people who fancy themselves as cinephiles or TV-ophiles. This is on Saturday tea time and was getting huge viewing figures, and people were talking about it in whispered awe in the playgrounds at school. Parents were asking me questions. And yet it doesn't take the easy route at all. There's a lot in this that isn't saying, oh yeah, we got to pander to what television executives think audiences like here. This is, and it's proof that actually if stuff is done well, audiences have much more imagination than they are often given credit for. You dreamt of a blue box. David Tennant is... he's so good. And what's really moving about this is that as far as he is concerned, he is John Smith. and we're essentially killing John Smith in order to get the Doctor back, and that whole thing about what do I represent? What am I if I'm and that opens up bigger questions about consciousness and what it means to be. I think, therefore I am. I mean, it's there is so much richness and depth to this, and also it's really harrowing and exciting. It's exciting science fiction storytelling, and it's a shot at night. Yeah, this is surely one of the greatest Doctor Who stories of all time, isn't it? It has to be. It's interestingly though, because I have watched it with others, and neither Mo, who was with us for lockdown, who watched quite a few, nor Shez, my other half, but particularly, I thought they would be particularly impressed by this, and neither of them quite reacted in the way that I thought they would. In fact, I think both of them only watched the first episode. So that's interesting, isn't it? I wonder why that is. Maybe a science fiction concept too far that a viewer like me might take for granted and go, well, I can easily get into the ideas that we've got here of the family and the Doctor and all of those sorts of things. I don't know, because I think it's so human, and this is bleak and has a wonderful sort of siege-like atmosphere to it. She's got such quiet dignity, but with a sort of, there's a bristling fury underneath if there needs to be. Oh, now the Doctor's lonely, and I think that's quite important. Again, I struggle with what I think about Doctor Who. I mean, I was one of those. You say, the Doctor Who's very serious, and it's about being nice, and it's about being kind, and then I sort of think, well, actually, no, it's mostly about being a zippy and exciting adventure. And if Doctor Who loses its sense of humour, it's got a big problem. The reason we love Doctor Who deep down is because it's got a sense of verve and enjoyment and fun. The fact that it can then carry very important messages is yes, fundamental to its importance, but the secret of its success, I think, is that it is scary and funny. Those I think are the two major components that you need to get right first. Now that speech is, I think, it was in one of the trailers, but I think it was a different reading of that speech. It's a great speech, and it's all about what the Doctor is. I sometimes worry when the Doctor is sort of eulogized as this this amazing oncoming storm or whatever, whereas I sort of, because I like to identify as a kid, with the hero, as somebody that sort of saves planets mostly by mistake, with a car, one good solid hope, and a cartload of improvisations. The minute the Doctor becomes sort of faultless and godlike, I take a step back, and then, this makes you really question what the Doctor is. It's a very cruel act that he has done without realizing it. This is our hero, and he's created and destroyed this good man. And although we will be able to see David Tennant playing Doctor Who next week, that's no good for John Smith. You know, John Smith, he may have the same face, but he's not going to be the same person. And it shows a great braveness of this. But I think that's terribly moving as well. The John Smith is essentially a fiction. And yet it's a terribly moving story of it's just a bit like Shadavan, isn't it, in Castrovalva? I love that when he has a sense that he's not real, and then you go, but then that surely that means that I am, and of course his exercise of his free will that proves that he's real is when he sacrifices his life, which makes it an ultimate kind of sacrifice, and his the bombing of the village. The body count in this is quite high. We don't see it because we're rightly, we're concentrating on this, and again, but this, what I was talking about before, the sort of stiff upper lip thing that we kind of mock. This is about doing the right thing, even though it's of great personal sacrifice. And what I really like about the choice that is made with the story is that Joan, talks John Smith into doing the right thing. But then it's not, oh, and hooray, Doctor, you've saved us. It's go away, She sacrifices her happiness for the greater good. She sacrifices her love for the greater good. And I find it really moving. This is silly. This is it's, again, if you break it down to what it is, an avatar containing a shadow of a personality to shroud a 1,000-year-old alien from another world talking to a school matron from 1913 whilst a village is being bombed by alien mayflies, and they show they show the future that they could have had. I find that really, and I'm not soppy. I don't think I'm soppy, but I'm all for. And if you'd said to me, "Oh, Doctor Who's going to be quite emotional when it comes back," I'd go, "Well, I'm not sure I really want that. I just want fun and adventure and exciting." Because this is done well. This isn't. I don't think this is mawkish. I don't think this is manipulative. I don't think it's saccharine. The emotion is all justified by the writing, by the plot, by the character. It is essential to the storytelling that the emotional dilemma that they have here and the bond that they have because of who these two characters are and what it is they're giving up buys us all of these moments. It's not false drama. It actually shows us what we lose. The Time Lord has all of those adventures. But the Doctor but John Smith, could have marriage. And what's beautiful about this show is that, yes, the Time Lord's adventures are amazing, and you can see the universe and change the world and all that. And Doctor Who says about exceeding your expectations and the beauty and the amazing things that are out there. But it also says, do you know what? Tiny human moments are precious as well. And actually, those two things sound like they pull in opposite directions. But actually, the show celebrates both. One, the Doctor has one, and it comes at the expense of the other. So it celebrates both, but it also shows that there's a prize, that there's a price, and this actually shows that the price goes in both directions, which is really clever. And the sad thing is, we don't see. Because of this wonderful reveal that we're about to have, it means that we don't actually see the moment that John Smith dies, as it were. So it's a sort of off-screen, in the wings, self-sacrifice. But, and of course, it's the Doctor. It's and in terms of the storytelling and the plot, it's a great piece of doctorishness, because what the Doctor does is he makes his enemies underestimate him, and often at his best plays the fool. But he's not played the fool here. He's used the fact that they think he's John Smith to do other stuff, a little bit of sleight of hand. So it's a great, the Doctor. But then, obviously later, so it's a brilliant flourish. It's a brilliant flourish of the hero, showing the Doctor at his very best. But it's slightly tainted. Because for all of this virtuoso defeat of the villains, it's won on a tragedy. And on an individual tragedy. And I think, Doctor Who is at its best when it shows us that one tiny life is precious, tiny life. And obviously, I'm talking in comparisons of scale. There's nothing tiny about an individual life. And again, we from the beginning of the story that goes, we don't set up who they are. We just get right into the story. Again, I think this really works, but it's maybe a reason that we can't quite get our heads rounded as a traditional Doctor Who story or as a perfect Doctor Who story, is because it refuses to do the ending. This is a sort of beat of defeat, but what the Doctor actually does is done as a sort of narrated coda, which is really interesting. It's again very effective, but it's different and it's cruel, and it shows the sort of vengeful Time Lord. Also, the fact that they were all going to die. I mean, they're mayflies, aren't they? They're the reason they're chasing the Doctor is because their lifespan is limited, and he was hiding in order that they live out their natural life and die. But what he does is he elongates their suffering, which is sort of cruel and vengeful. And that's a really abstract idea, that she's in every mirror. Again, it's not trying to be literal. It's not, because if I can't even begin to get my head around how that might work. But I know I occasionally glimpse something out of the corner of a mirror. So it's, and I think it absolutely buys that. A lesser story, you would go, hang on, you're being a bit lazy. There's a few flourishes here just to, obfuscate the logic of the endings. This, I think, works absolutely perfectly fine. I think this is totally acceptable, even though it's different and strange and not quite traditional Doctor Who, and is not trying to join the mechanical dots to entirely satisfy us. Yeah, as to the process by which any of that stuff works, but it doesn't matter. It's almost fairy tale like. But that does distract me, actually, because I remember that was my take when I first watched this. Oh, okay, we're not seeing how he how does he gather up all four of them from the floor of that field and then start to, where does he hold them? Who does he tie up first? That sort of thing. Doesn't matter. But because you're going, what do these sort of different methods of dispatch, what do they represent? How do they work? Whatever. But it does all of that. You thinking about all of that distracts you from the fact that, wow, he's being cruel. He's being the Time Lord vindictive. She's so good in this. It's so, and again, we sort of want her to forgive the Doctor because the Doctor is our hero. And we want the story to let him off, because although, it's thrown up those moral dilemmas, we want it to be all right that the Doctor's alive, because we know how great the Doctor is and that the Doctor is our hero. And, that's the I think the wonderful aspect of the end of this is that, traditionally, you come with me and it'll all be better. Because after all, I'm played by the same actor that played the other guy, and the story is braver than that. She is less gullible than that. She is better than that. And doesn't let him off the hook. He can't buy her back, if you like, in a neat storytelling manner. He can't do that. He can't rely on the fact that he's a television icon, because in this story he's not. What she says is absolutely right. If you'd never chosen this place, would anyone here have died? No, they wouldn't. So maybe that's why the Doctor doesn't want to be looking in mirrors. It's not because the balloon girl's in them. It's because you can go, oh God. I'm having to talk through this, but there's 2 or 3 times that it really has made me very genuinely emotional. And I know it's a stupid piece of television, but I do get I think really good popular culture can tug you emotionally, and actually I think it gets me more than great big intellectual tracts. Maybe that's just the way that I'm wired, but in a way I think popular culture, Dennis Potter, used television as his medium because it wasn't an exclusive one. It was the national conversation, and I think it's harder to do because you don't have the indulgence that you might have if you were chopping out a big chunk of your audience. I think it's so. Oh, and David Tennant's brilliant. David Tennant is so good, and that's lovely. I love that. I forget actually the sort of affection that they have. Oh, Tim. Yeah, and of course, because the spectre of his death is still hanging over it. As far as we're concerned, in this story, the biggest war ever. That's so. And again, it would be easy and glib to sort of go, oh, you don't have to fight, and you go, no, absolutely not. We've learned that war is hell. But actually, the point is that's an easy answer. Sometimes you have to fight, and if people hadn't in those wars, we would be living in a very different world now. So it's very, very easy to do an anti-war piece. I think it's harder to do a piece that says, war is terrible and that war was awful and wasteful, and yet it would be glib to say that they shouldn't have fought it, and the lovely thing is that he survives because his sixth sense gets them out of it. And the Doctor does, and there's a lot of narration in this, isn't there? So Harry Lloyd does the narration of what happens to the family, which is really interesting, sort of first-person narration of your own doom, and then this is given a real grandeur, and it's it's just a couple of actors in a muddy field, and they get away. Yeah, I'm sorry about that guy. But the 2 guys we know, that's always the thing about television, isn't it? To show how terrible something is, you see lots of extras and things getting killed and blown up and flung about. But so long as the 2 that you've met before are all right, then that's kind of all right, and he, and yeah, and actually the guy who's bullied him at school, when things are worse, all that goes out of the window. And of course, because there was the vicar was credited in the Radio Times in the cast list, you kind of assumed that you would see the marriage of Joan and John Smith. You thought a marriage would be on the cards. I didn't realise it would be a Remembrance Day thing for Tim, and I think this actor, did he turn 100 I know he's a very old actor. You can see he's a very old actor. But I think he might have done, but I could be wrong about that. But I think there's something terribly moving. He doesn't get a credit. I think is he called Hugh Reese? Because he's a non-speaking actor, but he does a little bit more than a lot of non-speaking actors. Gets and actually does that very well. And there's something terribly moving, of course, about seeing young cherubic Tim as an old man who's a wheelchair user, at the other end of his life. The fragility of mortality, that in the blink of an eye, and I actually saw somebody the other day that I hadn't seen for a while. I saw them on the telly. I went, oh my God, they've suddenly aged. Well, they haven't suddenly aged. They've aged over time, but time moves a lot quicker than you'd think. I think that's a superb. I was going to say a superb episode of Doctor Who. I think it's a superb piece of television. I think it's admirable. I think it is of good intent. It is hugely imaginative. It is emotionally honest. It offers no glib or easy resolutions. It poses questions without any of the vagueness of the answers to those being vagueness of thought. That the questions that it poses have right and wrong answers, and sometimes both at the same time. So it's intellectually and morally complex, but emotionally very true. And it's an adventure about a public school getting attacked by anthropomorphized scarecrows. It's glorious. I mean, it takes what Doctor Who does, and does all the things that Doctor Who does well. It does a lot of the things that Doctor Who does better, and it also does some stuff that Doctor Who hasn't really done, but that is absolutely right and suitable and works within Doctor Who. I think it's a triumph. Maybe there's a reason the reason I don't watch it all the time is it's almost because it's like a really good meal. You don't have lobster thermidor every day because perhaps it's too rich for every day, perhaps it's too special for every day, and perhaps that's why. It's an extraordinary piece of work. I think it's amazing. So my three things. Well, one is the scene of the boys, preparing for the Scarecrow battle and the hymn, and the coming in and them crying. I just think that's extraordinary. I think it's. I really do. And imaginative and brilliant. I think you have to have Jessica Hines in there. I think it's an amazing performance. I think Joan is a really rounded character. I love the fact that actually it's not all happy clappy in the end. The Doctor has ruined her life and has killed her love, and she tells him to go. I think that's brave that it does that, and she does it so well. And yes, the concept, the whole Doctor Who lives as a human, not just because, and it's actually not, Doctor Who has to live as a human. That's sort of the lodger, and I love that. The Doctor has to live an ordinary life, but actually, the Doctor, seeing what the Doctor is when the Doctor is John Smith, and then that terrible thing, because we sort of like John Smith, but we go, yeah, but it's because he's the Doctor, and you go, no, it's, as the story progresses, you go, no, it's not the Doctor, it's John Smith. It's somebody who's been created by the absence of the Doctor, but that vacuum has been filled by a consciousness and a life, and that is snuffed out, and that decent consciousness and gets less of a chance of life, less of a lifespan, and yet he's so rounded and real and decent. Less of a life than the Mayfly aliens. Do you know what I mean? I find that extraordinary. So just the whole concept of, the Doctor being shrouded and living another life. The whole concept of human nature, as it were. Which perhaps that's my bonus thing for the whole thing. So I need another thing about episode 3, and I think that. Well, do I say the character of the headmaster and do I say the public school setting? Do I say the build up to the fact that it's the eve of World War One? I mean, that ties in with that. I think all of that ties in with that. That war scene, really. The music is excellent. The music is superb. The night filming, Charles Palmer's direction is exemplary. But again, that sort of ties in with the the shooter. I mean, that covers a lot, doesn't it? That machine gun scene. No, I think I will go back to the character of the headmaster, because I think, not only because it's Pip Torrens and he's just a great actor, he's just one of those actors that is the lifeblood of this country, frankly. But because that character could have been written as a cliched idiot, and Doctor Who's full of those, and they can be very entertaining, but it even treats him with respect. Yeah. So, the 3 things from this episode: that scene. Oh, Jessica Hines as Joan, and her story and her arc. The headmaster and the treatment of him, and then that ties in with the whole sort of public school thing, which I think is a really important theme in the whole story. And then my thing for the whole thing is the central concept of the story of the Doctor having to, inhabit this human avatar unconsciously. What does Paul Litchfield of A Wheezing, Groaning Sound think?
Anyway, so moving on to Family of Blood. Baines again. I really love the speech that he makes to the headmaster when he says war is coming and all the boys will die in the mud. And do you think that they will thank the man who taught them it was glorious? That's a nice bit of anti-war rhetoric. And it's a really nice affront to the stuffy headmaster, who ultimately gets shot anyway, poor chap. The other thing, of course, is that I really like about Human Nature is the revenge of the Doctor. It's cold, it's calculating, it's not quite the Doctor that we're used to. Although it was sort of mooted in Tennant's first episode that he doesn't do second chances. So it's just the wrath of the Doctor. It's quite like dark, stark, cold. And it's just the fact that it's done as a voiceover from Baines' point of view, and the fact that he never says a word when he punishes each of the 4 people. And also, you've got to realise that those 4 people were just normal Earthlings that have been taken over. There wasn't a chance at any point... Sorry, that was my phone. There wasn't a chance at any point that they could be maybe turned back. They didn't even bother with that. He just basically keeps them alive forever, because that's exactly what they wanted, but in the most harsh, unimaginable way. Amazing. And the third bit that I really, really love is the bit where the Doctor's back. It's right towards the end, and it's the fact that he's fallen in love for the first time as John Smith as a human, and the matron has fallen in love with him, but now she realises that it's not the man who she thought it was. The Doctor says, I could be that, and she's just absolutely furious with him and so disappointed with him. She even says that he is the coward, not John Smith. The Doctor is the coward, and she has that amazing line where she just says, if you didn't appear here on a whim, would all those people have died? And the Doctor really can't answer, so she just goes, you can go. And it's just like, wow. It's so nice occasionally in Doctor Who to see the viewpoint of someone who goes, yeah, you've saved the day, but you caused all the problems in the first place. In fact, you being here has made my life miserable, which is rare in Doctor Who. So that's cool. And my overall joy is something that actually doesn't even have to be these 2 episodes. It could be any episode of Doctor Who, because I think the Doctor's the star, the companion's the star, often one of the villains is the star, but the unsung, unspoken star is certainly not unsung and unspoken by me, is the TARDIS. I think the TARDIS is just it's my favourite bit of Doctor Who completely. It's the other character. It's amazing. And to me, whenever the TARDIS materializes or dematerializes, it makes an episode. In fact, I get very angry when I watch Doctor Who and the TARDIS materializes off camera shot. You just hear it. I'm like, oh man, I need to see the TARDIS materialize and dematerialize. It's very important to me, Toby. And in this one, you get one of my favourite moments with the little boy at the end, and the Doctor goes, "Oh, you're going to enjoy this." And he sort of lets someone witness the most magical, amazing thing in the world, which in this case is the TARDIS dematerializing. I just think that's amazing. I adore that so much. And often I think of all the people out of all the episodes of Who, going all the way back from the original Doctor till now, there must be a lot of people who have maybe seen a psychiatrist and had quite an interesting life after seeing the Doctor, trying to explain that they witnessed a blue police box dematerialise or materialise in front of them. That must be an awful cross to bear in life. But yeah, my overall thing is the TARDIS. It's just absolutely stunning. Appearing, disappearing, a joy. And when the Doctor allows someone to be a little witness to that event, that's extra special to me. So yeah, that was my choices. Thank you very much for asking me. I now have to go and clean my adipose. Bye.
Oh, I love Paul. He's very funny. He's an excellent mimic, by the way. He does so many good voices. If Paul had been the age he is now in the late 70s and early 80s, he would have been in every single television program going. He's a really vocally dexterous, talented performer, but he has a sensibility that is very in tune with the sort of bygone days of showbiz. I really enjoy his stuff, his presence on the wheezing, groaning sound, and I should have guessed. He is an absolute. Every time they review a story in a wheezing, groaning sound, if there's a TARDIS materialisation or dematerialisation, Paul has to just have his little say on it because it is absolutely his favourite thing. So I should have guessed that. He was quite right to point out that brilliant speech of Baines's, because I think I was so keen there to go, what's interesting about this is that, it is, although it's saying war is hell, it also, shows the reasons why it was fought as well. I think it's because I take for granted that obviously Doctor Who's going to do the war is hell side of things and the give peace a chance side of things, which is more to my sensibility, I have to say, though I get sort of more pragmatic in my old age. But I think that message of peace and that refusal to glorify war, and so therefore the importance of showing how disgusting and horrible and dirty it is very important to that speech of. But of course I was talking about the other side of it because as I say, I take Doctor Who's stance on those things for granted, which means I maybe didn't talk about it as much as I should have done because Baines's speech is incredible and cuts through again all of that sort of, those kids are all wearing suits and all very pleasantly turned out, but when you're fighting in the mud, does the fact that you can stand up straight and to attention, and most of you march in time, that's all for nothing when you're slithering in the mud and bits of your mates are flying over your head. And I think it does all of that with great sensitivity, because it's quite easy to be anti-war, and it's quite easy to be glib about those things. I think it's a much more intelligent treatment and all to its taste. And what else did he say? He said so Baines's thing, that was that shouldn't have surprised me. Joan saying go away, I mean, that was kind of, I maybe get a little smattering of a point for that. Sorry, I've got a slightly dead leg. I can't remember what his other thing was. Oh, the vengeance of the Doctor, which I'm quite uneasy with, but I think that's the point. But I don't think I could ever choose it as my favourite thing, because I don't see the Doctor like that, even though, cognitive dissonance here, I know that quite often the Doctor blows people up and does things that, involve the deaths of others. And I think having this on the nose makes us sort of confront that. So whilst I accept it is legitimate and it is extremely well done and it is very thought-provoking, I'm not sure I like it, but that says more about me and perhaps the hypocrisy of my own image of what life and therefore Doctor Who is than anything else. But I think that is interesting, and I think one must always, when something is good, which this is, I'm a bit like that with comedy. I quite like jokes that are against my liberal sensibilities if they're good jokes. Because anything that challenges, because we know that our worldviews are full of contradictions. And if you don't, I think you're doing it wrong, because the people that don't are the Daleks. They're the ones who are 100% sure. If you're 100% sure, you'd shoot me in the back of the head if I threatened your worldview. I wouldn't shoot you in the back of the head. I'd probably acknowledge that there was some element of truth in what you were saying, but nonetheless, I still think my way is right. Because I think any worldview is full of contradictions, and we live with contradictions within our own morality all of the time. And I think it's good to be aware of that. I don't know what the answer is, and I think it's intellectually rigorous to tussle with those things. And I like drama that throws those things up, and I don't resent one that perhaps signals some of the flaws in my own arguments. I don't know how that makes me feel. It fires my synapses, I guess, which means it's good. But it will still never be my favourite thing, because the Doctor is a person of peace, and isn't vengeful, except for those moments that the Doctor is vengeful. But I don't like those, and yet I sort of do, because it makes sense. Good stuff. Good stuff. A Wheezing Groaning Sound is a brilliant Doctor Who podcast. You don't get the sort of waffle I've just spouted on it. You get them doing toilet humour, and they've got a great rapport between the three of them. All three very talented, sharp comic minds who all love Doctor Who and are prepared to be ruder about it than I am. So listen. I've been putting this one off for ages because I thought it would be tricky. Why? Why would it be tricky? It's an amazing piece of television. It's a great piece of Doctor Who. Sorry if I've occasionally got a bit highfalutin. Sometimes I think my mouth runs away with itself when I'm talking about what is, after all, children's family entertainment about somebody travelling through space and time in a police box. And I think some of the arguments I might have started to make in certain points perhaps don't even hold water, because you have to just keep talking, don't you? So even some of what I said might be wrong, but that's okay. We're allowed to be wrong. Do you know what I mean? You're allowed to be wrong. I enjoyed those days where people were allowed to be wrong. So listen, yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think it's special. I think it's a very, very classy piece of television, and one of Doctor Who's finest hour and a halves. Works on every level. God, it's a good show, isn't it? It's a good show. Well, look, thanks for listening. I hope wherever you are and whatever you are doing, subjecting yourself to this has made your day better, either by making you realise that whatever faults you thought you had, at least you're not as bad as the guy you're listening to, or if it's just made you happier that you enjoy these particular episodes that you already knew were brilliant, or that it's made you happier that you got better ideas than the prat you've just been listening to waffling on, or if it's just made you enjoy the images conjured by the reactions that I had, and it made you scurry back and watch those episodes as soon as you're back from your run or your walk or your bus journey or your day at work or whatever it is you're doing. Whatever it is you're doing, I send you lots of love and gratitude for listening to this. I wish you all the best in your endeavours, and however bad the world is, it's currently pretty bad. Something has to triumph, and and sometimes it's the little things, and we get security, and Doctor Who gives us a bit of security, doesn't it? Even though it's terrifying, because it's our childhoods where actually we realise we were kind of safe from a lot of the awful things in the world that we get more aware of as we get older. But I hope that as we go through these torrid times, we know that there is something that Doctor Who tells us should, if we do it right, triumph, even in the face of terror and awful things. And the thing that triumphs is, hopefully, human nature. Take care. Oh, well, look, thank you ever so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. My special guest this time around is Paul Litchfield, who can be found on Twitter at Mr. P. Litchfield, and he's a co-presenter of the podcast A Wheezing Groaning Sound, which you can also find on Twitter. I would like to thank him, and indeed the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Ruben Herfindahl, Peter Burns, Peter Harness, Ronald Hayden, Rob Leonard, Christopher Meredith, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, Nick Tedston, Risto Mitty Sarillo, Peter Blackett, Andy Parkinson, Mark Sandham, Legion Henderson, Ian K. McLachlan, Joel Ahrens, Sam Estirem, David, there's two Davids there, neither of their surnames have been given, so you know who you are, and Jenny at Blue Box 99. The music is by a David whose surname I do have, Dave Gates, and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. Oh, I got Dylan in there on the credits, as is supposed to be the case, although the music very nearly ran out. I could go back and move everything back and do a couple of cuts here and there, but I'm not going to. I like the fact that historians in the future will be able to catalogue. The historians in the future aren't going to catalogue any aspect of this, but I like the idea that they might. Ha ha ha! Who'd have thought? I bet nobody playing a Chumbly in Galaxy 4 thought historians in the future would be thinking about what they were doing. And I spent much of last year not only thinking about what they were doing, but trying to find out things about them and what happened to them all. And sadly, they're all no longer with us. So who knows, whatever it is you're doing today, you never know whether it will be important to people in the future. Although I know that this won't be remotely important to people in the future. Not that important to people in the present. Anyway, look, if you would like to be a patron, I'm very grateful to those people who are, and they all went to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, where for £3 or upwards per month, you can get access to bonus material, advance releases. If you're listening to this now on the iTunes feed, the patrons, they listened to it 6 months ago. I should think, about 6 months ago. And they've also got access to earlier releases of the Too Much Information podcasts and Indefinable Magic. But they're really far ahead with these Happy Times and Places. And there's also exclusive material and access and all sorts of other things. £3 a month. It does go up, but most things are available at that lowest tier, from which you can also get a 10% discount if you sign up for a whole year. Oh, Hugh Reese, by the way. I don't know where I got the idea that he might be 100. I mean, he might be 100, and maybe I noticed that and then forgotten it, but I just had a quick look in my notes and everything. I can find nothing about him possibly being 100. He has been a Liberal Democrat councillor in Swansea, and is also a singer, retired, was he a conductor, something like that, but part of the musical makeup of where he's from. So performer and politician. Oh, I could have included him in my politics podcast that I did for Indefinable Magic. Found out a couple of other political connections. Oh yes, Ingrid Oliver. I think her, who plays Osgood. I think her parent has been an MP. Anyway, sorry, this is me thinking aloud, but that's what this bit is for. If you're listening to this bit, you've only got yourselves to blame. But this is what I spend my time doing at 4 minutes to 2 in the morning. As my mind goes to some strange places, usually Doctor Who related. You've just had access to those thoughts, which usually just remain the business of me and my psychiatrist. Anyway, look, lots of love to you wherever you are. As I record this, the world's presenting us with some huge unpleasantries, and there's nothing profound or apposite that I can come up with to say, but I can send you lots of love and wish you all well. And let's hope tomorrow is a better day. I mean, as you listen to this, it's the future, so I hope that you are in the future are enjoying a better present than the one that currently confronts us. It sounds so trite saying that on a Doctor Who podcast, doesn't it? But I feel like saying something. As I say, if you've stayed this, if the worst thing that's happened is that I've slightly embarrassed myself, well, I think the world is showing us that there are worse things, and it's way beyond the end of when this podcast got interesting. So you've only got yourselves to blame. But nonetheless, lots of love to you.